We all know what stress feels like, right? It's that looming deadline, that crazy traffic, the to-do list that just never seems to end. But what you might not realize is that over time, that feeling, it isn't just an emotion, it's actually remodeling your brain, right down to the circuits that hold your most important memories. And that connection, well, it's way more physical than you might think.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start by looking at who this really affects, and trust me, the answer is probably not what you're thinking. Then, we'll get into the science of your body's built-in alarm system, and what happens when that alarm gets totally stuck in the on position. We'll even look at a fascinating twist in how this all plays out differently for men and women. And then, the best part, we'll finish up with how you can actually take back control. All right, let's start with that moment that, where did I put my keys? Or what was that person's name again? You know the feeling. It's super easy to just write that off as, oh, I'm just getting older. But the latest research shows that's a huge, huge misconception.
I mean, be honest. I bet for a lot of you watching, the answer is a big yes. It's this very modern anxiety, this fear that our brains are just getting overloaded and we're starting to, lose our edge. Well, it turns out you are definitely not alone in feeling that way.
And get this. This is where that whole "it's an age thing" idea just gets blown out of the water. A huge poll from UCLA and Gallup found that 1 in 7 young adults, we're talking people between 18 and 39 years old, are already reporting issues with their memory. So this isn't something for our grandparents to worry about. It's happening right now to people in the prime of their lives. And when the researchers dug a little deeper, they found something really interesting. Across every age group, the biggest culprits weren't just bad genetic luck. They were these things, lifestyle factors that we can actually change. Depression was the #1 predictor, but look at the others. Inactivity, high blood pressure. This is actually fantastic news because it means we have a say in the matter. So, what's the actual biological thing connecting all this? To really get that connection, we need to pop the hood and look at the amazing machinery that kicks into gear whenever you sense a threat. And it doesn't matter if it's an ancient threat, like a saber-toothed tiger, or a modern one, like 1,000 unread emails.
Okay, so this system is called the HPA axis. I know, it sounds super complicated, but all it is the connection between 3 key players: the hypothalamus and pituitary gland up in your brain, and the adrenal glands that sit right on top of your kidneys. Just think of it as your body's emergency alert system. It's an absolutely brilliant piece of biology designed to save your life.
It works kind of like a relay race. First, your brain's threat detector, the hypothalamus, senses danger and fires the starting pistol. It releases a chemical messenger. That messenger zips over to the pituitary gland, which then grabs the baton and takes off, releasing a different hormone into your bloodstream. That second hormone travels all the way down to your adrenal glands and basically yells, "Go!" which triggers the release of cortisol, the famous stress hormone that gets your entire body ready for action.
And this diagram here shows you that whole cascade beautifully. You can literally trace the signal from the brain down to the pituitary and then out to the adrenal glands. Cortisol then floods your system, making you focused and ready to fight or run. But here's the really clever part. You see that negative feedback loop? Once the danger's passed, the cortisol itself tells the brain, "Okay, we're good now, shut it down." It's supposed to have its own off switch.
So, what happens when that threat never really goes away? When the stress just becomes chronic. Well, that's when this incredible life-saving system starts to backfire and cause some serious problems. The problem is really quite simple. The HPA axis was not designed for the world we live in today. It was built for short, intense dangers, not never-ending ones. Those constant deadlines, the money worries, the emotional strain. It just keeps that cortisol tap wide open, just dripping and dripping day after day. Think about it like a smoke alarm in your house. A normal stress response is like when you burn the toast. The alarm goes off, you deal with it, you turn the alarm off, everything goes back to normal. But chronic stress? That's like the alarm is just blaring, nonstop, 24/7. And that constant noise, that constant flood of cortisol, it just causes wear and tear on your entire body, especially your brain. And this is what that constant blaring alarm is doing at a microscopic level. It kicks off something called neuroinflammation. Basically, your brain's own little immune cells, the ones that are supposed to be the good guys, they get overactivated, they get confused, and they start releasing all these inflammatory chemicals that can actually damage and even kill your own precious brain cells.
So, what does all this damage actually look like in the real world? Well, it's not just some abstract idea. This constant state of alarm leads to physical, measurable changes in your brain. Your hippocampus, which is the memory center of your brain, can literally start to shrink. It can trigger the buildup of those nasty amyloid plaques, the ones linked to Alzheimer's disease, and on a fundamental level, it just weakens the connections between your brain cells, making it harder to learn, harder to remember, and harder to adapt to new things.
Okay, and this is where the story gets another really fascinating layer. It turns out that this whole process doesn't hit everyone in exactly the same way. Researchers are finding some really important differences between how male and female brains seem to handle the long-term wear and tear of stress.
A big study out of UCSF found something that I think is pretty surprising. They discovered that while stress is obviously bad for everybody, when they looked at how our thinking skills decline over many years, it seemed that older men were significantly more vulnerable to its damaging effects than women were. This chart really just lays it out there in black and white. The study was tracking what scientists call executive functions, which is basically your brain's CEO. It's the part responsible for planning, making decisions, and staying focused. And as you can see, for men who reported high levels of stress, the decline in those critical skills was way steeper than it was for women who were under similar pressure.
So what's going on here? Why the difference? Well, the researchers found a major clue in everyone's blood work. In men, higher stress was directly tied to a much bigger spike in an inflammatory marker called IL-6. This is a pretty strong hint that their bodies were launching a more aggressive inflammatory attack in response to stress, and that extra inflammation was, in turn, speeding up the damage to their brains.
Okay, so we've looked at the problem, we've looked at the mechanism, and I know it might sound a little bit grim, but here's the really important part. The science also shows us that a lot of this is not inevitable. So let's finish up by talking about what you can actually do to build a more stress-resilient brain. So where do we even begin? Well, the most powerful tool we have isn't some magic pill. It's this whole approach called lifestyle medicine. It's the simple but really profound idea that the way you eat, the way you move, how you sleep, and how you connect with others, those are the absolute cornerstones of protecting your brain for the long haul.
And these right here are the pillars of that approach. I want you to think of each one of these as a way to manually turn down the volume on that blaring smoke alarm we talked about. Regular exercise, eating foods that fight inflammation, making quality sleep a priority, actively managing your stress. These aren't just nice-to-haves, they are scientifically proven ways to help regulate that HPA axis.
And as this shows, the toolkit you have to work with is incredibly broad. Over on the left, you've got those powerful, everyday lifestyle choices. That's your foundation. But on the right, you can see there's a whole range of other options, from things like SSRIs, which can also help calm that HPA axis, all the way to brand new cutting-edge therapies. The point is, you are not powerless here. There are so many ways to take back control.
You know, at the end of the day, the most incredible thing about your brain is that it's designed to change. Scientists call it neuroplasticity. Yeah, chronic stress can absolutely shape it for the worse, but that is not the end of the story. That exact same ability to adapt means that every positive step you take can start shaping it for the better. The choice and the power really is in your hands.